All right. So first of all, thank you for having me. Welcome. I know a lot of you are familiar with the Travis Manion Foundation, or you've met me if you haven't. My name is Derek Abbey. I oversee the Military Veterans Program at San Diego State University. Also a student here at the University of San Diego, and I'll be graduating this May, hopefully, assuming that I finish my dissertation. Yeah. Spent a career in the Marine Corps before I started working in higher education, and found myself doing a lot of volunteer work with the Travis Manion Foundation, where I'm an ambassador and a mentor. So what is the Travis Manion Foundation? We use veterans and surviving family members really to have a positive impact on the greater community. We do that through a variety of programming, but it lends to the value that the military member brings and those military connected citizens in having an impact post-service. So many of you have heard about, the warrior's journey, and too many of us as veterans think that journey ends once we step out of the military. And that is a big false, really. We really need you, our country needs you to continue that journey beyond taking the uniform off. The journey continues while you continue to have a positive impact on your community, and that's really what the Travis Manion Foundation is all about. So as we get started, what I want you to do is just take a few moments. I know you have all these sheets in front of you. You can utilize the sheets if you want to, but I want you to think about a moment in your life when you were at your greatest, when you were thriving, when you were in flow, you were working on a task, one of those times when you've lost track of time, but you were succeeding. Think about a moment in your life when you were doing something like that. Take note of it. If you want to write it down, you could write it down as a narrative. You could write down bullets. But think about what you were doing. Were you part of a team? What was the task? How did you feel? All of those things, all of those characteristics. It could be when you were in the military. It could be when you were doing high school sports. It could be something since the military. The hardest part is I'm going to ask somebody to share.
I'm ready.
All right, give him a moment, Simon, and then we'll move forward. So take a couple minutes to think about that, and then we'll come together as a group again. All right, who wants to share? You want to share, Simon?
I'll share.
Okay.
Let's see. When I was a drill instructor,
okay.
I was very tired. I was weighing 100 and nothing, soaking wet. Didn't eat, hardly slept. Never went home. But we were making Marines. I wasn't alone. I had a team with me, of course, of drill instructors for 8 cycles. And I guess when you walked off the parade deck and you've made, a company of Marines, a fine young man into Marines, it's very rewarding. I think that was the best moments and the most comical time of my career.
We'll get into some of the comical stories later, but great example. So you were part of a team. That was one thing. You were working with people, driving towards a mission, if you will, that involved improving other people's lives or improving their experience. Great example. I want you all to think of your own example in your mind. What was it? Were you part of a team? Were you working on something technical? Were you by yourself? Because some people like to do technical things and just focus on programming or something like that. Everybody has their own individual stories. Everybody has their own individual cases or scenarios where they really find themselves thriving the most. So think about that, kind of take notes of that, and then we're going to come back to that again at the end. So what are we hoping to get out of today's event? First, we're going to talk about what are the 3 components of thriving, or what does the Travis Manion Foundation measure success on. We're going to talk about what we use as far as the strength-based approach, and we're going to identify some of your strengths and passions and how you might apply them in the next phase of your life. So we base all of everything that we do at the Travis Manion Foundation through the lens of positive psychology. So what is positive psychology? Most people are very familiar with traditional psychology. So I have a problem or something happened in my past. So I go to talk to somebody. You can think of the image in your mind of you're sitting on a couch. This happened to me and I'm talking about it with somebody, and they're going to give you some solutions to move forward in a better way. Fix some of the things that happened in the past so you can move forward in a better way. So that's kind of past focused. Positive psychology is far more future focused. So how do I move from the point that I'm at right now, take all of my strengths or everything that I'm good at, apply them, and then move forward in a better way? Or how do I approach a situation, a specific phenomena, and learn from that to improve and move forward in a better way? A couple of charts are on the board, or on the screen here to kind of help you better understand that. We'll start with the one on the right here, and that looks at kind of what is it that we can control as far as being happy, if you will, whatever happy happens to be to you. Part of that is genetic. So 50% of our makeup really goes into our mentality and how we approach and how we go about living life as a happy person. Don't use that as an excuse, because 10% is your context. So we find ourselves in all sorts of different contexts. We've had all sorts of different experiences that, of course, impact our life and our happiness. But 40% of that is you. 40% of that is your mindset. You have control over how happy or how fulfilled or how satisfied you are in your personal life. And a lot of that has to do with self-efficacy. And self-efficacy for veterans specifically can be pretty scary. I've seen a lot of people in my office going through the higher education process and break down and say the exact same thing. Just tell me what to do. But when you were in the military, you had a pretty specific system. You know, if you wanted to be the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps or the Chief Petty Officer, what's the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, there's a specific path, right? You weren't going to skip some rank on the way to getting that goal, whatever it happens to be. Very set, specific path. Higher education is not that way. Most stuff outside of the military is not that way. You own your own destiny. We all have different contexts and things like that, but you steer your own ship from here on out. I can't tell you what that path is. This is your life. But that's really, really scary for a lot of people. And that kind of goes back to that self-efficacy piece. That is yours. The other side is the standard deviation bell curve right here on the left. So look at that as you're facing a moment. Something happens to you, some event happens to you. We're going to approach that, experience that event, and once we move past that, most people are going to be the center of that curve. Business as usual. There's no changes. Some people are going to have a setback from that. That event's going to happen. It's going to impact them in a negative way, and they're going to move on in kind of a deficit. What we want you to do is be the right side of that curve. The high performers. An event happens, we assess that event, we learn from it, and we move forward in a positive way. That's the positive psychology side of the realm. Traditional psychology is on the deficit side of that realm. Look at it as transition out of the military or transition from higher education. You're going to learn from that moment. We know of all sorts of people that struggle through that, and they move on in kind of a deficit. I've lost this system, X, Y, and Z, and not talking about people with specific circumstances or injuries and things like that, but just people that struggle through transition out of the military. Some assess it, it's business as usual, and then some move on from that transition and thrive in that new area. So think about those things together. We want you to be the high performers on the right side of that bell curve, and we want you to have that self-efficacy to own where it is that you're going on in the next phase of your life, whatever that happens to be. So how do we at the Travis Manion Foundation measure success? Simple. Call it MRE, meaning, relationships, and engagement. So when you go through our programming, are you finding meaning in what you're doing? Do you have strong relationships? Meaning you have healthy expectations of others, they have healthy expectations of you. You're not just hanging around with other veterans, but you're exploring, building relationships with others in your community. And are you engaged? Are you actually engaged in your greater community? Are you doing things that you're passionate about, that have meaning on your life? All those things kind of overlap with each other. But really, if you're excelling, in one of those areas or all of those areas as you go through our programming or when you're finished with our programming, then we have been successful, and you as well are being successful in whatever it is that you're doing. Because when we're talking about community, it could be any community that you're engaged with. It could be the community here at the University of San Diego. It could be your specialist, your group of student veterans and others, or military-connected students. It could also be your community wherever you live. If your kid is on a sports team and you're coaching that or you're involved in that, that could be part of your community. Or it could just be the place that you lived, or whatever else that you might be engaged in. What are you passionate about? Are you engaged in that and looking to have a positive impact on it? All right, so strengths. So did everybody get a chance to fill out the VIA survey? Or did anybody fill out the VIA survey? Okay, that's fine if you didn't, because this is what you would have seen. So these are the strengths according to VIA. So each one of us lean into our strengths in different ways. So if you did the survey and you got your top 3 or your top 5 and they came out and you're like, this is not me at all, that's okay. Because this is an instrument, it's an assessment, and the best and most important piece of any assessment is not necessarily the results that you get, but the time that you spend assessing those results and comparing them to yourself. Are they accurate? If they are accurate, great. Why are they accurate? If they're not accurate, great. Why are they not accurate? Reflect. That little self-reflection is really the best part of this whole thing. All right, we're going to go through another exercise. What I want you to do is, if you did take the VIA survey, take your top three or 5, and list them out. And if you didn't take the VIA survey, take a look at the screen and pick what you think are your top 3. And what I want you to do, once you have 3 or 5 of those, is I want you to think of a point recently where those strengths manifested themselves in your life. It could be in the last month, it could be in the last year, the last 2 years, just sometime recently when you notice, hey, this is how I approach that task, this is a strength that I use, this is a strength that I use on a regular basis, and this is how I do it. And again, the hardest part is we're going to come together again here in a couple minutes, and I'm going to ask somebody to share, somebody besides Simon. So who took the survey? All right.
I did.
Simon did. Good. Noel, did you find anything surprising in your results?
Maybe not surprising, but I kind of didn't realize it until an event happened that I had this quality. So I've taken this a few times, just being going over to TMF offices, right? And the one is courage. It popped up a few times. So I didn't really think anything of it until most recently. I had 2 siblings that were involved in heavy drug use. And for them, it was kind of one of these things where one of them went into a rehab facility, another went on life support, and then went on to react and is in a coma. So I think courage it popped up, and I didn't really realize it until I went home to visit. And I think the thing is that me showing courage, or in essence, trying to be strong, supported my mother and what she was going through. So I think not necessarily not showing emotion, right, but dealing with it in a manner that was healthier, and being courageous and going up there and saying, hey mom, X, Y, and Z is happening, we need to do A, B, C. So I think that it didn't dawn on me until that incident happened. And I was like, wow. And she actually mentioned, I mean, she only speaks Spanish, but she mentioned that, it's kind of courageous that you were telling me to my face, we need to do this, this, and this. But it didn't dawn on me until later on.
Yeah.
So just sitting here, I was like, oh, courage, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But
Well,
I didn't think anything of it before.
I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I think that's a perfect example. Definitely one of those intangible ways that these things find themselves coming to the surface. So I appreciate that. Anybody else want to share an event or a strength that they feel that they manifest them in their life on a regular basis? Jesse.
Yeah, the favorite thing that I do at work for this is when we do a tour for a prospective student or someone who has been accepted and is trying to figure out what they're actually going to do. It's just a lot of fun for me because I get to, help take care, under kindness, I get to help take care of someone and help them figure out what they want to do. Like the whole, what should I do here? Well, I can't tell you. What I can tell you is there's some options, and you should pick what's best for you. Here's how you would do those. And getting that high touch relationship started out the gate with a new student is, I think, one of the nicest things you can do to somebody, because people are lost. They are trying to figure out what they can do. And at the same time, you have to not tell them what to do, because that's not kind, that's not right. And you need to be able to make sure they're just making an informed decision as best they can, even if it's not coming to USD.
Yeah. How that honest, genuine message can have a significant impact. Thank you. Great. Those are all fantastic examples. Thank you so much for sharing. So, I mentioned I did a career in the Marine Corps. So I'll tell you, my number one is appreciation of beauty. So most people probably don't look at a Marine and think that's probably going to be your number one strength. But believe it or not, it makes a lot of sense for me. I spend a lot of time outdoors. I love the outdoors. It's also where I recharge. So I share that with you because I want you to do now. I want you to look at those strengths that you identified, and I want you to look at the other side of that. How in practicing, or these coming to the surface so forward for some of you, how might they be seen potentially as a negative? Potentially a weakness or in a negative light or something like that. And, for instance, appreciation of beauty. Hey, there's Derek. All he cares about is keeping his head in the clouds. He's a little aloof or something like that. It could manifest itself like that, or it could be seen that way or read that way in others. So for this exercise, I want you to look at those strengths that you've identified and look at how they might be seen or how they might manifest themselves in what could be perceived a negative way. Questions? All right, take a couple minutes to do that and we'll come back. All right. Sounds like you're already sharing your answers, so we'll bring it back in. Who wants to share this time? All right, we'll get new people all the time. This is awesome. Best group ever.
I wanted to share kindness, because it's very easy to take advantage of somebody who's kind, and sometimes you can see that amongst us all the time. Right? People who are very, very kind might be either overrun by somebody else's decision, or they don't speak up because it can be seen as maybe rest or something.
Yeah, or others might think, oh, all they care about is making people happy or something like that, or kiss the task or something at hand. Great example. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd say probably hope, because it's just too optimistic all the time. You need to be prepared for the worst. It's funny because they say prepare for the worst but hope for the best.
Yeah.
But if you're always hoping for the best, you're going to be disappointed a lot.
Good. I agree. Anybody else? So what I don't want you to do is look at this and say, oh, I took the survey and it says my top 3 or top 5 strengths are X, Y, and Z. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily weak in certain areas. It doesn't mean that you're weak in the other areas that weren't listed. It just means that these are your natural balances that come forward when you find yourself in a group or facing a task or something like that. So it's okay to have hope. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are not prepared for something else. And it's okay to be kind to others. It doesn't mean that you can't focus on the task and get things done. It's just that's the balance that naturally comes forth. And good things to think about. So we've talked about strengths and what other people might consider weaknesses, or you might consider weaknesses, the shadow of that. What kind of scenario might you find yourself in where you're going to have to discuss those things? I feel like I got to do the Jeopardy music.
You're asking?
Like in a job?
Yes.
Like working with groups?
So, an interview. So what's a common question that somebody's going to ask you at an interview?
What are your biggest weaknesses?
Yeah, what are you? Yeah, so they're going to, oftentimes, it's one of the most common questions. People are going to ask me, so what are your top strengths? Or what's your number one strength? And then that one is usually followed up with, what's your biggest weakness? Right? And so the correct answer is not, I work too hard, or the stereotypical answer like that. That's not the weakness answer that you really want to go in. But I'm going to give you kind of a little tidbit on how you can answer that question and really turn it into almost a strength question. Because we get a little bit like, how do I answer this question? Because I don't want to tell them that I'm actually weak in some areas, and then they're like, well, that's not the person that we want. So in another survey or another instrument that I've taken before, I am an activator. So I come in, I'm action-driven, typical kind of Marine mindset. I'm going to assess where are the problem areas. Let's drive to fix them. But what I need to realize is that's the way that I work, and not everybody is constantly driving or initiative motivated or anything like that. And so how that can manifest itself in a negative light is through a lack of patience. So if I don't realize that everybody is not like me and they're not acting like I do in a group, then I could get a little bit impatient with people. And so when I've been posed with that question in the past in an interview and somebody asks me what are one of your weaknesses, I'll tell them one of my weaknesses is patience, and this is why. However, I'm very self-aware of that, and it's something that I keep forward in my mind in realizing that other people are not the same as me. And so in answering that question, I've pointed out that patience might be a area that I fall short in, but the self-awareness is what makes it a strength, right? And so now you're going to find yourself in those interviews. For those of you that are graduating and you're sitting in front of somebody and you're having that interview and they ask you, so tell me a few of your strengths and tell me a weakness. Okay, you got a couple of answers right in your hip pocket. Those are a couple questions you don't have to worry about. And remember, how do you turn that weakness in that event into what can be perceived as a strength? And anytime you can talk about self-awareness, that's how you can turn that around. Hey, this is something that might manifest itself as a shadow for me, but it's something I'm very, very aware of, and I strive to make sure that I keep at the boundary as I need. All right, so there are a number of assessments out there. Some of them are better than the others. This is a great one, the one that you took via. It's free. Strength Finders is out there. You can get Gallup's book, take the assessment. It costs a little bit money. Huge database of information supporting that assessment. I think it's pretty valuable. Myers-Briggs is out there. There's 1,000 versions of Myers-Briggs. A lot of people use it. Not necessarily my favorite one, but it's one that's out there. And again, I would really spend some time looking at that and assessing, is this accurate or isn't? Pymetrics, that's using kind of almost artificial intelligence. It is artificial intelligence to assess what your strengths and weaknesses could be. And then the DISC version. Those are just additional instruments out there that you can utilize if you want to explore this deeper. And I think they're all really valuable if you take them and then you spend the time doing that self-reflection and assessing, hey, this really aligns with me or it doesn't. But be honest with yourself. If it's telling you something that you don't necessarily like, why is that really getting under your craw? Is it because it's true? Sometimes that's what you're like, oh man, this is me. I am that person. I don't want to necessarily be the person that's just constantly appreciating beauty and everything that we're in because your head's in the clouds. That's not my case. I actually love that I have that piece. But whatever it is about you, if it's something that you don't necessarily like, it's okay. It's okay. The important piece is to do the self-assessment time. All right, so passions. Oftentimes you hear a lot about, what would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? If you had that and you had all this free time and you spent your time doing X, that's where you find your passions. Does anybody agree with that? Oh, good. This is a good crowd. I don't agree with that either. Because we have a lot of free time, and we don't always apply our time where our passions might be, or where into the things that are most valuable to us. However, there are ways of discovering really what those passions are. What do you enjoy doing? Because if you can align what you enjoy doing with what your life is, as far as what you're making money at, what you're working at, if you can align those things, that really allows you to live in harmony. We get a lot of fulfillment out of our job if it has a purpose to it, right? That's one thing that when we separate from the military, we lose a lot of our identity. We lose a lot of intimacy and relationships that we had, but then we often lose purpose. And too often people kind of throw the word purpose around with this kind of flippant attitude in the sense that, purpose is a paycheck, and that's not true, because I've seen a lot of people out there making a lot of money that are not happy at all. And a lot of the times we separate from the military and we have to do that basic Maslow's needs, right? I need a job that I can pay my rent or pay my mortgage, I can feed my family and pay any other bills and stuff that you have, but that doesn't necessarily meet that purpose piece. So how do you fill that purpose bucket outside of that? Travis Manion Foundation is one of that. Have a positive impact on the community. Things that you care about. What is it that you care about? Now let's invest in that. So how is it that you find your passion through those routes? Oftentimes it comes down to just doing a simple inventory of your values. Spending some time writing down everything that you say is important to you. 20, 30, 40 items, and then take half of them away, and then take half of them away again until you get down to that last 4 or 5. And those are the 4 or 5 things that you say are most important to you, or that you espouse are most important to you. Now take those and compare them to, where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? And things like that. Because most of the time we espouse these are our values, but then when we assess how we apply them to our time and money, they don't really match up. And that's why I kind of go back to saying, if you had all this free time, where would you spend your time and money? Because it's more than just you that influences what you do. It's the community around you. It's the groups that you hang out with that often tell you what to do. So maybe you own a BMW. Do you need a BMW? Or do you just need a car to get you back and forth? That's an example I use because that was me. So I was in a fighter squadron, and you had to have a BMW because that's what you had to do if you're in a fighter squadron, right? And then everybody was in debt. So I did a little values inventory, and I said these things were important to me, and then I looked to where I was spending my money, and those things didn't align. It's like, well, I have this car note from this BMW. Why do I have this BMW? Because that's not anywhere on my values list. So then I sold the BMW, cleaned up my money, and then started assessing where that time and money was met. So if I say my family is important, am I spending time with my kids? If I say my community is important, am I investing in my community? If these things are the things that I'm passionate about, am I actually doing that? So paying attention to how the community around you or the culture around you impacts that, then you can really boil down to what you're passionate about and what you really, really care about and find harmony in that. All right, we've kind of discussed a lot of this stuff already, but I want you to think about some of these questions, and we can kind of just go down the list and bring up some answers. We've already kind of talked about how these strengths have you found them in recent times, but how might you place the strengths that you've discovered into the next phase of your life? Whether that's a profession or just a place where you'd spend time. Any ideas or thoughts? How might hope, if you will, if that's one of your top strengths, how might you find work around that or working with that? Or if your spirituality is your number one strength, how does that manifest itself in the next phase? You probably can't be a drill instructor any longer unless you go back in. So where can you find a job that allows you to work on a team, have a positive impact on people? You're fine working hard, obviously. What's something that might fulfill that for you? Yes?
For me, I really want to major in political science and take a politics career, possibly, in the future. And I went to a retreat that basically talked about how to put your faith into every career, whether it's music, politics, history, science, all of that. And so that was just really beneficial to learn. And so just learning how you can incorporate your faith into your job.
That's good. And I like how you presented that, because you're not necessarily going, I'm going to be X in this position.
Because I don't know.
No, and that's okay. It's okay to not know, but it's often nice to know a direction, right? So I work in higher education. My job is I oversee a military veterans program at San Diego State University. So I run a military veterans program at a major university. But that's not my passion or my calling. So if somebody asks me what my calling is, I tell them, I want to have an impact on the higher education landscape when it comes to the military at a national level. And I can use the position that I do, the job that I have, to do that. Because not only do I have an impact on students at San Diego State, I get to have an impact on students here at the University of San Diego. I get to travel around the country and have an impact on that greater higher education system when it comes to military. And that is true. I am truly passionate about that. That's where my voice lands. That's where I have influence. It's what I care about. It's a community that I care about. And it's a way that I can leverage that expertise to have a positive impact. And I can do that at San Diego State, where I work. I can do that here at the University of San Diego. I can do it across the nation. So it's just a calling, right? It's a direction. So as long as I'm heading in that direction, I'm filling that purpose bucket, and I can use the strengths that I have to have a positive impact on the things that I care about. So you don't necessarily have to have, I want this job. You could find that job, and it might fill that, but it can also be a direction. I'm going to move towards this because it allows me to have an impact in the area that I want to have an impact on in the way that I want to do it. So really, it's just a matter of getting that rudder pointed in the right direction. Great stuff. So goal setting. This kind of goes back to what we were just saying. It's a little bit dangerous to set the one goal out in the future. I want to drive towards this because if we have a setback, that can be pretty upsetting for a lot of people, right? Was failure an option in the military? It's not an option at all, right? You're going to take the hill. I don't know if we could take that hill. Maybe we should reassess this. No. You're going to go take the hill, or you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to make sure it gets done in a timely manner, whatever the time and the standards are. We're going to do that, and that's it. So a lot of people struggle with kind of having some mistakes once they get out. To my staff and the people that I work with, I tell them we're going to fail all the time. We're going to fail fast and cheap because that's how we learn, and that's also how we're innovative. But sometimes it's a little difficult to work that way with military folks, right? I need that path. Tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. I want to do it, and I'll execute. That's not the way it is outside. Sometimes that path isn't so set, so it's good to just set that rudder. I'm going to go this direction because this aligns with everything that I need. Sometimes you don't have the option to do that, right? If you have a mortgage, a car payment, a family, all those things, you have to have food, shelter, safety for yourself and your family, and you have to make a certain amount of money to do that. And perhaps the only jobs that are going to do that for you are the ones that don't fill your bucket. And that's okay. So how are you going to go about filling that bucket? And that's where these kind of other organizations like the Travis Manion Foundation and others can really help fill that bucket. So hey, I'm going to put my time in with my work, but then I'm going to get my purpose piece filled in another way. And then if you can align those, well, now your life's in harmony, and you've really hit the bonus piece. So. All right, so next steps. What can you do from here? Of course, we want you to be a part of the Travis Manion Foundation. If you're not already, I know some of you already are, so I'm preaching a little bit to the choir. You can always find information on our website. Operation Legacy season is right around the corner. Every April and around Veterans Day, we significantly push efforts into having a positive impact on the community with community service projects. What are they? We get that all the time. It's whatever it is that you want to do. If you come to one of us and you say, I want to do X and this is the positive impact it's going to have on the community, then you can do that for an Op Legacy project. You don't need to do it yourself. There's plenty of them out there in the community that you can just sign up and go participate. So get on the website and check them out. Become a Character Does Matter mentor, so work with youth on providing and explaining and sharing what the value of living a life of character is, whatever those favorite character traits of yours are, or whatever is important to that community. And then, of course, right here, you're closest to the West region, so you can always email the West region representatives through that email, or you can just talk to Heather in the back, or Andrea, or Manny. They're all here from the Western team, and then, of course, you can talk to me. We really want you to give us feedback on the Leading with Your Strengths presentation that we just completed. So please, before you leave, just do this. You can do it through your phone. I'll leave that up there, but then I just want to open it up for questions and discussion. Any questions or thoughts or rotten fruit that you want to throw at me? How are we on time? Oh, there we go.
Just one comment. I really liked how you put forward the thought of finding your maybe a career, as I see it, through what your strengths are and what maybe your purpose is or what you want to do. Because very often when I look for jobs, or when I try to find it, I more look for jobs and then I try to find the purpose why I would get in, instead of looking at the purpose or the opposite. I'm trying to, what am I good at? What do I want to do? And then find the job that matches. So it's two different ways of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to find purpose in the work that you're doing because it makes us think that it's worth it, right? And I think we're all going to do that. But it's nice to do a little self-reflection first and figure out what is my purpose? What am I driving for? And then if you look at that job and you're like, holy smokes, man, this really aligns with what my purpose on being on this planet is, or my purpose in life is, and that's yours to define. If you can align those, man, that's golden. And obviously that doesn't happen all the time. You know, it's like I see plenty of positions listed that I could really do really well and probably make a lot of money, but I'm like, that's just not for me. I can do that. I could probably do it really, really well, but I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do it. It doesn't align with what I want to do. And, you know, we all need money because that's how we get that food, shelter, and safety. But we probably don't need as much as we think we need. And some people think that it's happiness. I don't think that's true at all. I've seen plenty of people that barely making any money that are very, very happy. And I can make a lot more money, but I'm happy with what I do right now. So it's nice if you can do that self-reflection. And of course, do the same thing when you're looking at those jobs or those organizations that you're going to be a part of. But if you know, hey, this is what I stand for and this organization aligns with that, now you're off to a great start. Well, thank you, folks. I really appreciate you letting me come by and say hello.